Hi everybody, welcome to the Youth in Landscape's second application tips webinar. So today, let me start by introducing myself. My name's Michelle Kovacevic and I've been coordinating the youth activities at the Global Landscapes Forum for the last 2 years. And I'm also joined today by Karen Veridiano, who is one of our youth leaders who was selected last year. And so Karen's going to talk a little bit about today her experience applying for the program last year and what she her tips for do's and don'ts and what she found. So her experience, as well as my own me going through what the program this year is about and what we're looking for in applicants. So with all that, let's get kick-started. And we're going to start. I'm going to just share my PowerPoint presentation, which hopefully you can all see. If we click on my screen. Fantastic. So today's going to be split into a few different parts, and I'm just going to put that up. So what we hope to be able to answer for you today as applicants or prospective applicants for the Youth in Landscapes initiative is, I'm going to start off just by giving you a really quick rundown of how youth are going to be involved in GLF this year, what the program looks like, and just dispel maybe any questions you might have about the landscape challenges and how that's all going to work. We'll then move into what we're looking for. What are the criteria that we're going to be selecting youth applicators, youth innovators based on? We have a few tips of what to do and what not to do in your application based on a few years of experience in selecting young people for our programs. And then also we'll take your questions. So you should be able to see in the top left corner of your screen right now a little chat box, and that box there is for you to correspond with us. So if you have questions as we go that we haven't answered, please do type those into the chat box and we'll do our best to address those at the end of the webinar as well. And before we go into those questions, Karen will share some of her experiences as well. So we should be wrapped up in the next half hour, 45 minutes as well. And this will be recorded and we can share the recording after the webinar, but I would encourage you to not wait too long because applications for the program do close on Sunday. So you've got a few days left. So this hopefully will get you what you need to be able to finalize your application. So starting off with how youth are going to be involved in the Global Landscapes Forum this year, as you would hopefully know if you've read the website, we're looking to select 50 young people to participate in a face-to-face workshop over 4 days from the 1st to the 4th of December. And that workshop will be a leadership development, have leadership development aspects, skill development and aiming to prepare our youth innovators to really go to GLF and lead also in their professional lives following the program. And we'll also have a unique I guess we're calling it a project accelerator component, and this is built around the landscape challenges this year. So not only will you build key skills as a participant in this workshop, but you'll be separated into a group of 10 people to work on we'll work on a landscape challenge, which we're designing this year in partnership with a bunch of different organisations. So what do those challenges look like? So as I said, we have 5 different challenges and they're centred around the different GLF themes this year. So we've got a one in the top left there about land restoration. We've got one on land rights and tenure. We've got one on education. We have a challenge on finance and trade around sustainable supply chains. And we've also got one on measuring success towards climate and development goals. And that's more of a tech focused one, and it's focused on water. So these 5 challenges are things that you would, in your application, you will score based on rank depending on which one you're interested to join. You can only join one challenge during the workshop. It will be too hard to have everyone jumping around the different challenges. And as a group of 10 young people, you will come up with a solution or an idea to solve this challenge after that 4-day workshop. And that idea you will pitch at a Dragon's Den panel at the Global Landscapes Forum on the 2nd day. If you don't know what a Dragon's Den panel is, it's basically a panel of 4 or 5 judges, and they will basically give you constructive feedback on your challenge, how implementable it is, and how you pitched it, that sort of stuff. So it's a chance for you to develop those skills in coming up with an idea, pitching that idea, and hopefully implementing that idea if it's an idea that you know has some good grounding and could go forward after the event. I did get a question around, you know, if I'm a landscape ecologist, could I apply for the education challenge? Should I stick to my area of expertise, or you know, are you looking to make the challenge groups transdisciplinary? And we would definitely encourage you to apply for whatever challenge interests you, whether or not that's something in your field of expertise or it's slightly out of your field of expertise. We are looking to make each challenge group very diverse. We believe the best ideas come up from a group of people with lots of different backgrounds and expertise. So the main thing that you need to be able to demonstrate is why you think you can contribute to a challenge. So no matter if you don't have specific experience to solve that challenge, but if you have some ideas of why you think you'd make a good contribution to that, towards that challenge, that's kind of what we're looking for when you're trying to justify why you've chosen a specific challenge. So I would encourage you to go outside your comfort zone and pursue potentially a challenge that you think is interesting and different for you. So as I said, one key concept or idea, project, campaign, whatever, from each challenge will be pitched at a Dragon's Den panel on the second day of the Global Landscapes Forum. So the main role of our youth innovators is sort of is around that innovation around the challenges. And if you haven't had a chance yet to look at the challenges, you can find them on our website, landscapes.org/youth. They're both on the homepage. You can see here where they are. Please do have a look at them and make sure you're familiar with each of them before you actually apply for the program, because that is a central part of the application, telling us around you know, what challenge you're interested in and why. I just also wanted to highlight the question around listing your preferences for the different landscape challenges. So obviously here what we're looking for is for you to select from one, you know, the one you most prefer to the one you least prefer, to rank each challenge topic. In this part, unfortunately, we couldn't make the application do it, but basically we don't want you to say, you know, give each theme a 1, because then that would make it hard for us to put you in the challenge you prefer. So please do in this question, make sure you select, you know, a different, you rank the challenges based on what you're interested from 1 to 5. So yeah, don't click 1 for all of them. Otherwise, you know, that doesn't help us allocate you to a challenge. The other thing another question we received was whether it was possible for people to you know, to feedback from, you know, for people in different challenges to feedback and work together during the workshop. And we will have time definitely for everyone to get to know each other's challenges, of course, but you will be focused mainly on your own challenge. But I mean, of course, you'll be talking to other people throughout that 4 days. So you will have a chance to feedback and hear from other people about how they're going with their challenges, of course. But yeah, of course, you'll be focused on mainly your own challenge. Right, so moving now to selecting our youth innovators. Now that you understand sort of what the challenges are and how the event will be structured, what are we looking for really? So we have 5 main selection criteria plus 1 age criteria, and I'll go through each of those individually now. The first criteria that we're ranking, that we're scoring applications against, is a demonstration of your experience and understanding of landscapes and sustainability issues. This is not to say you need to be an expert in landscapes or sustainability or land use, not at all. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for you to show us, you know, that you've done some reading, you've done some background reading, you have an understanding of some kind, whether that's at a really local level, you know, you've worked with people on land use issues with people in your local community, or sustainability issues with people in your local community, or at a global level, you've been studying it or something and you've got some ideas there. Here we do need you to demonstrate you have some understanding, but I did want to emphasize we're not, you know, going to be scoring you based on your expertise in that area necessarily, but more your passion and interest and some indication that you understand the issues. The second criteria is creative thinking. As we're trying to work on pretty complex challenges, creative thinking is really important here. And the way we're going to be looking at how to assess that is the way you respond to our questions. So, are you giving the same response as everybody else? Could your if that's the case, if you're just giving us very generic answers, that's not really going to go very strongly towards us thinking that, you can think creatively about an issue. So think about in your responses, how do I make these answers really specific to me? Using examples is a really great way to show us ways you've thought about issues creatively in the past, for example. So think about how you demonstrate these skills in your answers. So, tell us about a time you thought creatively about an issue, and it may not be related to landscapes at all. That doesn't matter. We're trying to understand how you think creatively about an issue. As long as you can make sure that the examples you use, you can link back to tell us why they're relevant. So don't just tell us about something that doesn't seem to have any relevance to what we're talking about. As an applicant, you need to demonstrate and show us, here's how I thought creatively about an issue that wasn't related to landscapes. Here's why I think it means that I'd be a good applicant, a good person to work on this challenge. So make those connections for us so we can really clearly see and assess that. Passion and motivation is not normally something our applicants have trouble with. But this is obviously us. We do want you to see that you are passionate and you are motivated to contribute to the program, and we'll sort of, I guess, take a look at your answers and sort of, I guess, take a look at how you've been able to demonstrate that passion and motivation, mostly through experiences. So I come back to this point again about experience. I mean, we really want to hear, examples from you of experiences that you've had that demonstrate a lot of these qualities. So to make sure you point to specific examples in your own story and your own history when you're answering these questions. We're really big on follow-up and implementation. So we're really looking for you to demonstrate an ability to implement ideas and collaborate as a team. So taking that first one, implementation first, what we really want to see is for you to show us how you plan to share what you learn, or even better, how you think you could implement some of these solutions after GLF. Implementation is going to be a really strong focus for us this year. We really want the ideas to be super concrete, and the organisations who are working on the landscape challenges with us are really interested to potentially take forward some of the ideas generated by youth innovators. So show us an example in the past of where you've implemented an idea you've had, or or show us how you think you could implement those ideas that we might generate. Collaboration is also a big one because you will be working in a team to solve your landscape challenges. So again, here, and there's a question in the application form specifically asking you about how you work as a team. Use an example of when you've worked well in a team, and what role you played in that team. So that's what we're looking for there. And lastly, clarity of responses. So, we want to make sure we've seen evidence that you haven't rushed the application, you've thought about your answers, you've prepared it. We're not looking here for perfect English necessarily if you're not English as a first language speaker. So if English isn't your first language, we don't need your English to be 100% perfect, but we need to understand the ideas you're trying to put forward. So, we'll look the other way at spelling and grammar mistakes here and there, as long as it looks like you've given it a lot of thought, you've given it a go, and you haven't rushed the application. But we don't want you to sort of have it proofread by someone who changes it. We want it to be in your own voice, and thoughtful in your own voice. And lastly, there is an age, and there have been some questions about age criteria. So here we are we're keeping the applications criteria from 18 to 35 years old. If you're sort of 17 turning 18 or 35 turning 36, we can have some leeway there. But anything vastly outside of those age ranges is not eligible for this program. Lastly, I just wanted to talk about diversity of selection. So we really pride ourselves every year on having a really diverse selection of our 50 youth innovators, and this year is no different. We'll be looking to have a good sort of representation from both men and women, so hopefully 50-50 in our selection of 50 young people. We'll have 25 men, 25 women. Regions-wise, we're looking to select people from all across the world. This is a global program. We don't have any quotas necessarily, but we will be using our judgment to make sure that there is that diversity of gender and of geographic representation. And also we're looking for people from different backgrounds. So, if you are someone from legal profession with an interest in this area, but necessarily no experience in it, or if you're in the medical sciences, if you've got a bit of an interesting, different background that could contribute in a different and interesting way to this program, we're really interested to hear that. So, and when I say backgrounds, I also mean all kinds of people, from academics to entrepreneurs to students to, to business people. We're looking for people from all kinds of backgrounds. So don't feel like you're not going to fit in if you're someone who's, from a business mindset. And this is not just a science or academic conference. I wanted to just quickly talk about commitment, because that is important for us. So if you are selected to be one of our 50 innovators, these are the things we need you will be required to do. We will be running a bunch of webinars in October, November to prepare you for your landscape challenge. So we'll be running one on what is landscapes and how to think critically about them. There'll be a sort of a webinar on pitching. These things are all really, we've designed to prepare you and to further your sort of understanding of these issues and contribute to a great discussion. So make sure that you can try to attend as many of those as you can. You also will need to be in Paris from the 1st to the 7th of December. And if you're already planning to go to attend COP, it's going to be difficult for you to go to COP sessions during that time, because the workshops from the 1st to the 4th of December will be pretty intense. And then obviously the Global Landscapes Forum is on the 5th and 6th of December. And then on the 7th, we'll have a sort of a wrap-up lunch with everybody who's been participating. So it will be difficult for you to have other commitments in that time. So, if you are applying, please do keep that in mind. I'll come to in a second about funding. I know a lot of questions are, well, okay, if I have to be in Paris, is there going to be funds to help me get there? I'll talk about that in one moment. We also may request you to write several blogs, an introduction to who you are, reflection on the process as we go through it, or a wrap-up reflection of what you thought about the program, that we can publish on our website. And also we're going to have an evaluation process that's really important for us to improve the program that we'd like everyone to participate in. So the question on everyone's lips is funds and costs, I'm sure. So this year we have a limited number of scholarships available for participants that are in need. So these might be participants from rural areas, or people who have demonstrated a really great application that sort of satisfies all of our criteria, but yeah, need some funding support. And those funds will cover sort of flights or train travel, food and accommodation. Those scholarships. At this stage, it's not a defined number of scholarships. It will depend, of course, on what applications we get, where those individuals are coming from, and how much the cost of their travel might be. So we'll be sort of awarding those based on a sort of, I guess, an assessment as we go through the selection process. So there is funds. Basically, the key message there is funding to support a number of you to come. However, don't apply expecting that. So, in the application form, you will need to indicate that you require funding, and you will need to show us that you have thought about avenues for you to find funds. So even if you do need funding, have you looked at grant opportunities? Have you looked at sponsorship? Have you looked at a number of different ways of getting supported to come? We need you to demonstrate that you've been proactive with that as well. This isn't, we're not just going to hand out scholarships. We need you to be proactive in thinking about this too. And if you are not awarded a scholarship but do need funds to attend and are selected, our fundraising team is planning to help those selected youth innovators start a crowdfunding campaign or write sponsorship letters, identify other sort of sponsorship opportunities for you. So there is some support from our side as well to help you find the funds you need to get to Paris. But as I said before, most people who apply will be expected to find their own funding with support from our team, of course. But yeah, that's just to be clear on that. Okay, some do's and don'ts really quickly that I wanted to run through. Please do your background reading. It's frustrating to read an application from someone who clearly has not done any research at all into what our program is about, what our aims are, what our values are as an organization, what we've done in the past events. So really from our side, you need to show us that you have a good understanding of what our program is about, and how you feel that you can align with our aims and our values. And if you can demonstrate that, you're a really good way ahead of a lot of people in being sort of considered for selection. So, read our website, understand what we're trying to do, and make sure you can demonstrate in your application that you can help us achieve the things we're trying to achieve. Think about why you want to apply. What do you want to get out of the program, and what do you think you can contribute by taking part in our program? It's surprising how often people don't actually articulate that in an application. So we want to see that you've thought about that, about really why you want to be there, and what you can achieve and contribute by being in Paris with us. I've mentioned this a few times, but it's really important. The number of applications I read where honestly anybody could have written it. I read their application, and I don't feel like I know that person any better after reading it. It was just quite a generic, response to questions. So use examples and tell us your story. Your individual, unique story and experience. That's going to really help us. It's going to bring color to your application. It's going to help us understand who you are and why you deserve to be there. So use examples where appropriate, but make sure that, again, you link those examples back to our application guidelines or criteria. So if we're asking a question about, why, what experience have you had in the past with landscapes? If you give us a story about that, make sure you link it back to what the original question was. So don't just ramble on and give us an example that isn't relevant. Make that connection for us. Tell us how your studies or work demonstrate your creativity and passion, and how you might apply those skills and knowledge to solving the landscape challenge. So there's a question around, why do you think, why have you selected this landscape challenge? Tell us how, you think that what you've been doing in the past can help you solve this particular challenge, and be specific with that answer. It doesn't have to be a grand sort of solving the world challenge. You don't have to be involved in a big program or project like a global program like this before, but we just want to see that you're active and engaged and thinking about these sorts of challenges and the innovative approaches they might need. Again, make sure everything in your application is relevant to the question, and if it's not relevant, if you're making a tenuous link, if you're using an example that isn't quite specifically or directly related, make the connection, and be clear, concise, and to the point. In most of the short answer questions, we've given you a rough word limit, so 200 words, etc. Do stick to that. Don't write one sentence when we've asked you for 200 words. That word limit indication, I should say, is an indication of the kind of depth that we want from you. So the reason we've asked for sort of around 200 words is because we want a bit of a deeper response. We don't want one sentence answers. That being said, we're not going to count the number of words that you have submitted. This isn't an essay for an academic paper. It's a rough guide for you to know how much detail we're hoping for you to go into. So take a note of those word limits, but use them to guide you in how deep your answers should be, and try not to go over them too much or under them too much. And then just quickly, some don'ts. Don't rush your answers. Again, we're going to be assessing based on our perspective that you've thought through your application. Don't give us one sentence responses when we're expecting something a little bit longer, but then don't give us 500 words of text if we're only expecting 100. So make a judgment call there. Lastly, don't just link to a LinkedIn profile or a paper you've published. Give us all the information we need. Don't expect us to go and read stuff elsewhere. Your application as a document of its own should speak for itself. You should give us everything we need to understand you in that document, and not expect us to go and do our own research to find out stuff about you. Sounds like pretty obvious stuff, I suppose, but it's surprising how often these types of simple guides are not stuck to by applicants. Lastly, I just want to quickly talk about the videos. So the videos are 2 minutes. We've given you 3 questions we want you to answer. And unfortunately, we can only accept videos in English. We don't have the capacity at the moment to assess videos in different languages. And the main reason we've asked you to do a video is because we want to see your personality and how you present yourself. So in that video answer, we want you to demonstrate you know, that you're active and engaged, as I mentioned before, you're thinking about the challenges. And we kind of, I guess, want to see, you know, how do you talk about it? Are you someone who's very active and bubbly? Are you a bit more reserved, but, you know, and serious about things? That's for us as a way to see your personality a bit more than just from those written responses. Absolutely, we're not interested in the quality of the video. It doesn't have to be flash produced with slides and this and that. That's not at all what we're judging the videos on. It can be something you record simply on your phone or your webcam. It's you that we're interested in. So make sure the quality is good enough that we can see you and respond, you know, and understand what you're saying. But, you know, don't spend hours editing something up that's really flash, because that's not necessarily what we're judging it on. But if, you know, if you're interested in that, I mean, we won't stop you. So, I mean, that's up to you. Please don't submit your application without the video link. So those videos, after you created them, you post them on YouTube or Vimeo, and then include the hyperlink for your video in your application. We have received a few applications that don't yet have video links in them, and, you know, those will not be considered. So your application is not complete or eligible until you've put the video link in there. And videos will be posted on the landscapes.org/youth page, so keep that in mind. We will be running a video voting competition to launch next week with some prizes for the most sort of highly voted videos. So just keep that in mind, that these videos will be made public. Before I hand over to Karen to talk a bit about her experience, and then us obviously answering the questions that you guys have been posting, I did want to cover 2 more things, because I have had questions about them. The first one is around passports. Some of you have asked, you know, I haven't yet got a passport. It's in the application process. Am I still eligible? We don't actually ask you for specific passport information in the application. We don't ask you for a passport number, but we do expect that you will have a valid passport and that you can travel. So if you haven't got a valid passport by the time you apply, unless you're from an EU country and you can travel to France without a visa, your application is not eligible without sort of you having a valid passport, so that you can travel to Paris. And that will be especially if you're applying for a scholarship, we will need you to make sure you have a valid passport. You can't save the application, from what I understand. So, you know, and we have, when you go into the application form, we have given you a lot of information on page number 1 that tells you what answers you need to prepare before you go into the application form. So just be aware of that, you know, if you're going to sit down and do the application, you can't save it. You need to submit it when you do it. So you may want to prepare your answers before you go in to sit down and do the application. Some of you asked me how long the application will take. How long is a piece of string is my response. It really depends on how prepared you are before you come and sit down to do it. My guess would be, you know, between half an hour and 45, maybe an hour even, but Karen might be able to talk about how long she spent applying for the program last year. But it isn't a 10-minute application. It is a bit longer, especially with the video. So, but that's also helps us, you know, make sure that we can select a bit better too. So, and some of you have also asked about whether or not, you know, you've asked about your own projects, these projects that you're doing, and, you know, whether you can apply as teams, etc. I did want to make a point here, because while, of course, the way you solve the landscape challenges is up to you as a team, we're not selecting you based on how great the project's ideas are that you have right now. The ideas that you have should serve to strengthen your application, and we most certainly would love for you to bring some of those ideas to the workshop to help sort of solve the landscape challenges. But it is a team process. So, you know, just because you have a great idea doesn't mean that is going to be the idea that the team selects and the team goes through. So please do use your projects to demonstrate how you sort of fulfill the different criteria that we're looking for, but we're not selecting you based on how amazing your projects currently are, your project ideas are. that just to be clear about that. And I've been talking for long enough, so I'm going to hand over to Karen now to speak briefly about her experience last year, and then I'll move forward to answering some of the questions you guys have been posting in the chat box. Karen, you're on mute, just FYI. Karen? Yes.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi everyone. I'm Karen Viridiana from the Philippines. I was one of the very fortunate youth leaders that participated in last year's Global Landscape Forum. So for today, I'll be giving you some more specific tips, I guess, on how my experience on applying for GLF went about last year. So I'll be dividing these tips into two sections. So first is for the pre-application, and the second one is during the application. So pre-application phase, I've already I am aware of the GLF youth session that will be held in Lima, primarily because I've also attended another youth session prior to that. So in terms of my knowledge on this upcoming youth session, I'm already aware of that. And then secondly, I was consistently browsing the GLF youth session website because I wanted to be familiarized on the themes that will be posted there. And even though I do have the technical and actual experiences in terms of doing climate change work and Red Plus work, I still I still wanted to be appraised on the different things that's currently going on. So I did not stop by just knowing that I do have the technical background. I did still a lot of background reading. So and then thirdly, I've allotted time to answer the application form. So this is even before I got into writing down the answer. So I've already conditioned myself that there's a high probability that I'll be competing with a lot of equally capable and deserving youth applicants. And so I had to condition myself to give answers that would how do I say it? That would convince the selection committee that I'm the right person to do the position that they're looking for. So that's for pre-application. During the application itself, again, I allotted quite a handful of time on answering the questions. So Michelle mentioned earlier, how many minutes can you allot on answering the questions? So for me, based from my experience, I was able to complete the application in an hour or so. I think it's an hour and 15 minutes. So it took me a while because of the following reason. So I'll be explaining why it took me a while to answer all of the questions. So during if you could see the application form, I guess it's although it's not exactly the same as last year, but I think much of the questions there are the same from last year. And so even before trying to answer one question, I was very cautious on what the question is all about. For example, I was applying then for to be a facilitator uh, on the climate change and land use and indigenous people landscape theme. So there was a question there on what specific skill set do I possess to demonstrate that I am the right person to be a facilitator on that specific landscape theme. And so I took note of the keywords from the questions. So the keywords from the questions were what are the skill set that I possess in order to demonstrate that I'm a good facilitator for that theme. So when I now know that that's the keyword, that that's my answers were then to demonstrate that I do have that skill set. And how was I able to demonstrate that? So I've used simple words and very specific examples. So when answering a question, I think one of the tips that I could give is for you to give a bit of yourself on answering those questions. So for example, if they're looking for a skill set, So I don't just give an answer like, oh, I do know how to facilitate, I do know how um, to negotiate or to be a mediator in a discussion. So I use that specific skill set. I do know how to facilitate, but then I augmented it, or I added a specific example from my experience. So what I did was I did say that I was able to be a mediator during a conflict management while I was discussing about climate change and red plus over a lot of stakeholders. So stakeholders would range from local municipal officers to non-government staff, even the youth. There was indigenous people's youth during that time. So if you can demonstrate that you were able um, to be a mediator during such times. So that means that you can be a good team player during this year's Global Landscapes Forum. So those kinds of experiences that you had could be a good factor in terms of augmenting, or in terms of demonstrating that you do have the different skill sets in terms of fulfilling an innovator during this landscape challenges. So, and also, I was very particular on what will I do next after the global landscapes forum. So I always link to my future plans onto the things that I will be experiencing at the global landscapes forum. So most probably, the applicants could range, as Michelle said, from educators to entrepreneurs to from people from the business side of things. So there's a lot of sectors that will be involved during this landscape forum. And I think for the selection committee, well, for me personally, I would like to know where would you like the things that you'll be experiencing from the global landscapes forum to be continued. So there's a specific question I can still remember that from last year's application form on what are your plans after joining the GLF. So again, I was very specific on my plans upon returning to my home country or to my organization, that I'll be doing our echo or like a debriefing or another session towards educating the indigenous people's youth and the university students that I'm associated with. So those kinds of specific examples, you can write them down. For me, I guess it's a way of letting the selection committee know more of myself and my aspirations and the things that I specifically do, and then linking that to the questions or the skill sets that they are looking for. So those are the ways that I answer the application form. And also I took note of the number of words on my answers, and I made sure that I did not include other information that would just be noise to my answers, or those things that are not related to the questions that they're asking for. And the very reason that I think one has to take note of the number of words and even the length of the video is for you or for the selection committee to know if you can think critically and if you can use simple words that that can show that you can answer those questions in a cohesive and a concise manner. So those limitations are there for a reason, and I had to decode that actually while answering the application form. So you have to be you have to be very cautious on the different things that's going on the application form, because everything they put there has a reason to be on that application form, and you have to know why are those things there. So and last but not the least, before submitting the application, that's why it took me a while. I had someone to read my answers on the application form and ask them, or you could probably ask your siblings, your parents, or your friend to try to read your application form and ask them if they can be convinced that you're the right person for that position. And also, it's a good way because there's fresh eyes or there's a fresh view that could look into your application. So sometimes if you get too deep in answering the application, you tend to lose focus, and another person's point of view can be a good way of seeing the cohesion and the conciseness of your application form. So, and then I guess as a last note, I think the application form should be a document where the selection committee can see right through the applicant. So right through me. It should be a document where other people can visualize someone's aspirations without even knowing them or without even seeing them. So if you can demonstrate that, if you can demonstrate this through your application, then I think you're on the right track on being one of our innovators during this year's Global Landscapes Challenge. So those are the tips that I could give you. And if you do have any additional questions, then I'll be happy to answer them, and Michelle, of course. So I'll hand it over to Michelle now.
Thanks, Karen. That's really interesting to share your experience, and I'm sure everyone found that really useful. I did have a question from Rebecca for you. He said, do you think that your participation in the Youth in Landscapes program helped you to better articulate and engage more effectively on the UNFCCC discussions during COP20?
Oh, okay. So last year, I was also part of the International Forestry Students Association delegation in terms of the COP20 side events. Although we weren't able to really be engaged on the high plenary sessions, but we were able to attend different side events. So for me personally, while I was attending the Red Plus side events, it was very useful. I mean, we had a master class on doing networking and collaborating with senior officers or senior professionals. And I think it gave me a boost of confidence to say what my insights are. So I think it's a good way of, yes, it definitely helped me a lot on networking and just saying or collaborating with these people. And actually, there's a lot of partners also from my organization that attended the side events on the COP20. So it was a good venue for me to put forward the things that I've experienced as a youth and as a professional here in the Philippines to those partners worldwide. So it's definitely a good experience for me, at least for me.
Thanks, Karen. Yes. I think just to add to Karen's response there, so to answer your question, Rebecca, our program isn't specifically geared at the UNFCCC negotiations. So, there are a whole bunch of youth programs that are aimed to inform the COP process. Ours is a much more broad, and I would say has more of a professional focus than maybe an international policy focus, although there is definitely elements of international policy that come in some of the challenges you'll see as well. So it's not like we're preparing youth to give a position at the UNFCCC COP. However, we do have lots of partnerships. So for example, if you're familiar with the Conference of Youth, the COI, I mean, that's convened by the youth body to the UNFCCC. We often run a workshop there. We try to encourage our youth participants to go to that if they're interested in engaging at the UNFCCC level in those youth talks and developing positions, etc. But what I think the unique part of our program, and I think Karen sort of mentioned this, is we spend a bit of time, we spend quite a bit of time trying to unlock that sort of potential in young people. So building their confidence and their skills in certain areas. So as Karen said, we run networking masterclasses, which we will do again this year. We run a mentoring program where we pair youth delegates with senior delegates and help to get them introduced to different people. We look at different sort of participation skills, like how do you contribute to a discussion? How do you pitch an idea? These are all skills that I think help young people to better contribute to any kind of debate, whether that's an international policy debate or something in their own professional career or even in their personal lives, actually. So we're not there to build that specific policy-oriented knowledge necessarily, but we're there to kind of provide the platform for young people to unlock their potential to contribute to those discussions, I would say. So hopefully that answers your question. Excellent. Now, the last question that we had from, I'm just trying to find it now, Astrid, was asking us to go repeat and go a little bit more into detail regarding the creative thinking criteria. Karen, did you want to jump into that one?
Oh, for creative thinking criteria, I remember one of the questions from last year's application form is that how can you address how can you address major drivers of deforestation using REDD+. So although it's a very technical question, but I guess I was able to demonstrate to the selection committee that I can do that by not using the usual thing that you do when you try to explain climate change and REDD+ to an audience. So I didn't use the usual form of like lecture types and trainings and workshops. So what I did was I used arts and theater in terms of explaining to the youth, the indigenous youth, on the issue of climate change and REDD+. So it took me a while. It took us a while, our team, because we had to devise the workshop, the arts and theater workshop, into a workshop that even the younger generation, these are children like 5, 7 years old, that they could understand climate change and REDD+. So it was a very difficult task, but we were able to manage it using arts and role playing. So those kinds of creative thinking that you don't usually see from professionals or from scientists or things like those. So you have to think out of the box solutions in terms of how you can better communicate a very technical aspect like REDD+ or climate change into a broader audience. So when you think creatively, so you have to demonstrate that you do have the ideas and the capacity on trying to think of this out of the box solutions in addressing those kinds of technical issues. So I guess that's my experience from last year.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just to add to that as well, I mean, I think this comes back to a point I was making. We're not looking for generic responses. We're looking for very sort of different ways of thinking, I suppose. So think about, you know, a creative way you could answer our question that's still relevant. And you don't have to have necessarily had experience, you know, doing something like theatre that, like Karen has mentioned. There's many different ways you could demonstrate how you've thought creatively about a topic. And it's a little difficult thing to sort of I would say, like, itemize, like to say these are all the ways you can think creatively, because I think that's kind of against the idea of creative thinking. It is unexpected and it is kind of, you know, different and interesting. So what I would say, I think to kind of come back to your point on how we're going to assess creative thinking, you know, we're going to be asking ourselves questions like, did this application surprise us? Was it different? Was it interesting? You know, do you show that, you know, you've got a good balance of excitement and energy, and, you know, you've thought about, you know, in some of your answers, you're thinking a bit differently and outside the box. You're not sort of taking the mainstream answer, you know, around an issue. So it's a little hard to kind of, I guess, explain. It'll be one of those bits of magic we'll see when we see it. But I think the best way to approach it from an applicant's point of view is to look at each question and go, how could I answer this question? And then take a look at your answer and think, okay, how do I make this more creative, more about me, you know, more individual, more relevant to my specific experience. And I think, and as long as you make sure you do those things and you give good examples, then I think you're a very good part of the way to giving us a really interesting, different application that stands out. Okay, so Sakib had a question as well about the plans after GLF, which is a great question. So, you know, what from the GLF perspective is the ideal way forward? Now, I think a point to make here is, so I'm not here espousing the official GLF, I guess, line of where the Global Landscapes Forum is going. The youth program is run by the International Forestry Students Association, YPARD, and which is a Young Professionals for Agriculture platform, and the Global Agroecology Alliance. So what I'm sort of talking about here is not necessarily representative of the Global Landscapes Forum organising committee officially. This is one part of the way in which the GLF is run. So just to be clear that this isn't necessarily where the GLF will go, but what we ideally, I mean, for us, an ideal outcome from this program, because we are very focused on implementation and uptake, we would love to see some of the ideas generated by our youth innovators be taken up and continued post GLF. So whether or not that's a campaign that was designed as part of GLF, that team of 10 decides they want to actually launch and run that together. Whether or not it's, so as I mentioned, for each landscape challenge, we have a partner organization who is going to be mentoring the team of 10, and they've designed the challenges, often asking questions that they themselves want to know answers to, and have an interest in seeing great ideas come out that they could implement. So whether or not also it could be a partnership between our youth innovators and the organization who set the challenge to implement the idea, that would be a great outcome. So we will be having a post-GLF Skype call between each of the teams, so the challenge team and their mentor, to sort of, I guess, identify what they learned from the program and what might be some next steps. That being said, we don't want to put an immense amount of pressure on the youth innovators to come up with an amazing solution that's implementable tomorrow. This is a learning process for everybody involved, and we don't want to rush, I guess, amazing ideas. So if there's a budding idea that just needs a bit of time to develop and be discussed and taken up and thought of, that's also a great outcome for us, as well as, I guess, developing a whole bunch of great young people who now have the connections with each other and with the GLF community, the passion and the confidence and drive to go out and super turbocharge their professional and personal leadership. So there's a whole bunch of different, I guess, avenues of ways we're going to measure success, and all of that will feed into future programs that are run, youth programs that are run by IFSA, YPAD and Gaia at different events, not just the GLF. So hopefully that answers your question. Samantha has a question to follow up on the COP question. If youth leaders did want to stay for the second week of COP, do we have access to attend the talks or any second week side events? Great question, Samantha. So the Global Landscapes Forum is held outside the official UNFCCC negotiations, which means you don't actually need a COP pass to come to GLF. UNFCCC passes can be difficult to come by if you need to be with a registered organization that's part of that's recognized by the UNFCCC. IFSA gets a whole bunch of passes, and that that is a competitive selection process for their delegates or their membership to apply for. So we can't guarantee you, we can't give you a pass to the UNFCCC. You would need to find an organization that could give you that pass, but most certainly, we would encourage and welcome you to go to COP events in the second week if you can. But again, it's really hard getting, the quotas this year are pretty restrictive for lots of organizations. So we can do our best to connect you with people who we think, if you have a specific skill. So for example, we also partner with, we have some informal relationships with a youth media organization, and they often have young people joining their team to cover the COP. So if you've got an experience or interest in blog writing or article writing, and you're selected as our youth innovator, we might then identify that you could join their team and get a COP pass through them potentially. So we can potentially connect you to avenues to get those passes, but we can't guarantee those passes, unfortunately, just because of the difficulty in getting quotas and that sort of thing. So Ruth has asked about, can we talk more about the ranking section on the application? Ruth, can you be more specific about exactly what ranking section you're talking about? I was wondering, are you talking about the Landscapes Challenge ranking section, the slide that I showed before? If so, maybe you can just type yes in the chat box, and then I can bring that slide up again. And I know there's a delay, so we'll just have to wait for your response on that one. Karen, I don't know if just while we're waiting for Ruth to respond, if there's anything about IFSA's delegation to the UNFCCC you want to say, since you're part of it last year. I guess the applications for that have already closed, haven't they? And you have to be an IFSA member.
Yes, the application actually for the IFSA delegates, it has already closed. So it was, I think last month, it closed last month. And also prior to application to the IFSA delegation, you have to be a member of a local committee that's also authorized to attend the IPSA delegation and also recognized by the IPSA board. So if you're a student, currently a student, undergraduate, master's or PhD, and you're part of a local committee under the IPSA organization, then you can be part of the IPSA delegation. Otherwise, then I guess there's a lot of options actually on trying to be part of a youth delegation in a certain organization. So there's the Convention on Biological Diversity also has a youth organization, and I think they're also open to applications from youth in terms of their delegation during the COP session. So there's a bunch of other alternatives apart from IPSA where you could apply and be part of the youth delegation.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to just write in the chat box because I am waiting for Ruth to clarify exactly what her question was. But I think if, especially because I guess we're running a little over, Ruth, if you want to ask that question and get some more information, maybe you can just send me an email to the email address I've typed in that chat box, and I can answer that for you, just because we will need to wrap up pretty soon. I might just finish up, and then if Ruth, if your question comes through before I've finished up, I'll then respond to it. Otherwise, we will finish the webinar. So I think I just wanted to end with a sort of a note about, what makes, what to us, what have all of our youth leaders that we've selected in the past have in common? And I think that there is obviously a practical side. We want to see your experience and your understanding of landscape challenges, but then there's also this something different aspect. And, in your applications, what we want to see is not only that you've clearly communicated your relevant experience and you've spoken about how you'd apply the skills and knowledge you got from our program, we also want to see you're active and involved, not just in your studies or work, but in your communities, your organizations, and that you're passionate about increasing youth involvement and voice in international climate policy processes or international conferences. I mean, that's a really important part of our work. So, and in your video, show us your excitement and your energy, but your calm and well thought out responses. That's sort of what we're looking for, I think, as a whole package. So I think that's to wrap that up. Ruth, I've seen your answered about ranking the landscape challenges. And maybe I can just quickly finish on that. And Diana, about your question about the passport, again, coming back to the answer there, just that quickly, you do need to have a valid passport to apply. Pretty much our selection process is pretty quick turnaround. And if you're not in an EU member country, you're not going to have a lot of time to apply for a visa if it doesn't come through, in the next sort of few weeks. So yeah, unfortunately, if you don't have a passport right now, you're not eligible, but look out for future opportunities. There's a whole bunch of stuff we're doing in different conferences and areas that you can get involved in. I'm going to just quickly then go to my slide on the select the landscape challenge, just so we're 100% clear on that. So here's the question. I hope this is the one, Ruth. So here the question is, what landscape challenge do you want to be involved in? And we're looking for you to give us the ranking. So, number one, I want to be in finance and trade. Number two, I would, if I don't get finance and trade, I'll take education. Number three, if I don't get either of those two, I'll go to rights and tenure. So here you just have to make sure you select the boxes based on which one you prefer first, which one you prefer second, which one you prefer third, maybe this one, which one you prefer fourth. The point I was making here is that just unfortunately the way we've set up the webinar, the application form, is that you could actually select number one or number two for all of them, but that's not what we want. We want you to select, each one should get a different number. So just be careful of that, because for us, this is an important way for us to know, okay, they prefer this challenge, then we'll put them in that challenge. But if you select number one for every single challenge, that doesn't tell us which one you want most. So just make sure you give a different number to each challenge. Yeah, that's basically the point I was making. So hopefully that's clear there. Right. Fantastic. So thank you all for joining. We really look forward to receiving your applications. As I mentioned, they close on Sunday at 5 p.m. Don't wait to the last minute. Please do take the time. We won't be accepting applications that are late. So, you know, you've got a few days. Please take some time to do it. And we really look forward to seeing your applications. Thanks a bunch. Bye, everybody.
Bye.